This man is an immortal being. He has to watch everyone around him die of an old age. He stay with them from the beginning until the day they go to their grave. But despite from all of that suffer, he still pushed himself to take care of his territory. Let's begin our journey. Dithmarschen, nestled in the northern reaches of the Osnover Kingdom, it sits as the gateway to the polar wastes known as the Ice Peninsula. Cold winds drive away the warmth of summer, making it a place where heat cannot stay. Because of this, monsters frequently appear. In a quiet room, Father Alonso sips from a white cup, his face scarred and aged. He tells Roberta that he wishes to entrust this very place to her. Roberta, caught off guard, coughs into her hand and asks for his pardon. Roberta stares in disbelief, questioning why she would be chosen for such a task. Alonso explains that he knows the land well, having served as its head priest in the past. He describes a humble temple that stands where a grand cathedral should be, noting that the appointment of a priest there is a matter handled personally by His Holiness. Roberta tries to interrupt the old man, but Alonso continues his recollection, describing how the land is unlike any other. He speaks of the folk who live like nomads and how Eastern culture has influenced their dwellings, mentioning curious tents. Finally, Roberta shouts his name to stop the flow of words. She sets her cup down with a clatter, asking to speak plainly for a moment. She points out that but a month passed, the head priest of Dithmarschen vanished. Leaving the post vacant, she questions why he is recommending her, a woman ordained only 2 years ago. Alonso calls the matter simple, but Roberta retorts that the first task should be to seek the missing priest. Alonso tells her not to fret over her predecessor, his hand resting firmly on the table. Alonso insists her duty is to head to the post immediately and fulfill her charge, certain that His Holiness wills it. Roberta finds the situation highly suspicious. She wonders what Alonso is thinking, moving on as if a priest's disappearance is nothing. Looking at his calm face, she realizes he has already named her his successor and is only speaking out of courtesy now. She sighs, clutching her head, and asks why it must be her of all people. Alonso claims it is because she reminds him of himself. Roberta is stunned into silence. Alonso laughs, clarifying that he does not mean her outward form but something deeper. Alonso recalls taking her in when her parents abandoned her and ordaining her himself. Though no blood binds them, the long years shared have made them alike. He mentions his own successful time as the head priest of Dithmarschen and expresses confidence she will do the same. Roberta grew up on his adventure tales rather than fairy tales, yet a realization strikes her. Roberta notes that he never once mentioned his time in Dithmarschen. She wonders what he has hidden there. Now that she has arrived at the border, she resolves to discover it for herself, especially after hearing a certain rumor. A guard blocks her path with a spear, demanding to know where she came from. Roberta raises her hand, showing a glowing mark, and identifies herself as a servant of Ganymede come to pay respects to the Lord. A massive man steps forward, his presence so imposing that Roberta is at eye level with him even while she sits on her horse. She wonders if the blood of giants runs in his veins. She introduces herself as Roberta, sent by Father Alonso of the New Grand Temple. The man's expression softens at the name. He asks about her relation to the priest, and she explains that Alonso is the one who took her in. The man, Bernhard Mayer, smiles broadly and calls it marvelous news, praising Alonso's kindness. He introduces himself as Bern and explains that he serves the Lord. Bern remarks on how time flies, remembering Alonso as a man barely past 30. Now the hour has come for a successor to take the helm. Roberta asks to see the Lord first, but Bern reveals that the Lord is absent and will be long in returning. He offers to show her the temple instead. Roberta thinks of the rumors. Records state the Lord succeeded someone named Hilda. The records tell a story that defies nature, claiming the Lord has held his position for a staggering 300 years. Some whisper that he lives so long because he is half human and half elf. Roberta looks at the images of aging men in the records, thinking it impossible for anyone to endure 3 centuries. By now he should be a frail figure clinging to life, yet he moves about freely. She asks Bern what the Lord is out doing, and he explains that the Lord has gone nearby to perform an infant sacrament. Roberta is shocked, as none but a priest may perform such a rite. She asks if there is another priest in the area, but Bern confirms there is no other. The Lord himself shall preside over the ceremony. Roberta is horrified, questioning how an unordained man can ignore the gravity of the sacrament and undertake it himself. Roberta knows that if the ritual fails, an evil spirit could claim the child. She is frustrated by the lukewarm reaction of the guards. She shouts that she must see the Lord this instant. She kicks her horse into a gallop, racing toward the site of the rite. She sees a crowd gathered at sunset and wonders if she can halt the ceremony before it is too late. A child's cry rings out through the air. The child is unharmed. Roberta scans the crowd, asking where the Lord might be. A woman points just yonder. Roberta turns to a brilliant light. Mana seeps from the man's touch, entering the infant. Roberta stands frozen, her heart thumping in her chest. She knows that mana will not dwell in those who have not received the sacrament, which must happen soon after birth. Through a priest, a name is inscribed in the heavens so mana may dwell within the new life. Roberta witnesses it plainly as mana settles fully within the child. The man actually succeeded. She wonders who this man is as she was told no priest was present. The child laughs in the man's arms. A dark-haired man approaches her, noting that she rushed there because Byrne made another slip of the tongue. Roberta looks at him, thinking of the 300 years. His lifespan is beyond imagining. Roberta asks if he is the one she seeks. The man looks at her with a calm, steady expression. He confirms his identity. He is the Lord of Dithmarschen, Ulrich I. Ulrich identifies himself as the Lord of Dithmarschen. Roberta observes his presence in the sunlight, confirming he is no vampire while his stature proves he is not a dwarf. His youthful appearance remains a mystery, as it should be impossible for him to look so young at his true age. Ulrich admits he expected her, though her swift arrival surprises him. Seeing her shiver, he invites her inside for tea, reflecting on the weight of living an immortal life. Steam rises as Ulrich pours the brew, asking Roberta if the strong scent is to her liking. A flinch escapes her at the use of her name, prompting a demand to know how he identified her. Ulrich mentions his periodic contact with Alonso, who planned for her to become the next head priest. Roberta realizes her path was decided from the very beginning. She sniffs the tea, finding the aroma of the Songhua tea unfamiliar. A single taste causes her to gag. The flavor is alien. Ulrich explains the tea comes from mutant pine trees. The influence of the demon realm permeates everything in this land, altering even the roots of common plants. Ulrich warns her to adapt to the local food. Roberta comments on the weather, noting it is less bitter than the legends suggested. Ulrich attributes this to a recent warming trend, suggesting the Little Ice Age is ending. He questions her knowledge of historical eras. Roberta defines an era by the life of an empire, a standard Ulrich calls human. Ulrich holds up two fingers, explaining they live in the third era after the fall of two empires. The Little Ice Age began during the Second Collapse, a period he and the elves named to distinguish it from the true Ice Age. Roberta calculates the timeline, noting the Jawcaster dynasty began 14 centuries ago. Questions rise regarding how he speaks of such ancient history as a witness. Ulrich senses her doubt and asks what Alonso told her. Roberta admits Alonso shared nothing, though rumors describe the Lord as a 300-year-old half-elf. Ulrich muses on whether 3 centuries have truly passed before clarifying his status as a pure human. The truth seems harder to believe than the rumors. Ulrich offers counsel instead of proof, telling her to observe rather than overthink. He reminds her of her new role as head priest. Ulrich ends the meeting as others gather outside. He intends to finish today's ceremony himself, leaving future duties to her. He welcomes her to his service. As the ritual fire burns, the narrator notes that the pursuit of immortality is a recurring arrogance, a human attempt to reach the divine. Mortals live in gratitude for their existence, unable to hold what fate denies. Ulrich explains the infant sacrament as a sign of survival in a harsh land. The disorder of the etiquette bothers Roberta. An old man offers her wine to warm her bones, though she expects another strange taste. The wine is delicious. The man reveals it has aged for 60 years. The old man shares the story of the wine, a gift from Ulrich after a childhood hunting accident. A monster had attacked his family, and the boy's bravery in saving them earned him the bottle. He chose to save the wine for the end of his life, returning it to Ulrich for decades. Now, 60 years later, the Lord has fulfilled the promise. The wine is finally back in the old man's hands. Understanding her doubt, the man explains that the people of this land live their entire lives under the Lord's unchanging presence. As witnesses to his longevity, they accept him. He asks her to remain open-minded. Roberta's mind remains a storm of questions. She wonders if Alonso felt the same confusion on his first day. Hope for clarity remains as Roberta wonders if time will reveal her purpose and the Lord's identity. Elsewhere, a man in white robes petitions Ulrich, noting the rumors of the Lord's near immortality. He seeks aid for a curse afflicting his son. Ulrich repeats the word, questioning the nature of this curse. The man in the white robe stands beside a small, hooded figure. A sharp glint reveals a single orange eye with a vertical slit pupil peering from the darkness. A memory of a person cradling a limp body surfaces, surrounded by dark, swirling energy. The weight of a transformation hangs in the air, marking a change that defies the natural order. A quill scratches against parchment as the red-haired woman composes a letter to Father Alonso. A little over a week passes since her arrival, and she recounts the weight of her new position. From the very day she came, she began her duties as head priest. Since the disappearance of her predecessor, the parish remains in disorder, forcing her to work tirelessly to restore balance. She selects acolytes and carries out the backlog of sacraments to bring peace to the temple. Despite her efforts, conflict arises with the dark-haired man standing before her. She insists they discuss proper sacrament etiquette, noting she let things slide during the last ritual. She demands to know why one would not prepare incense and anointing oil at the very least. The man offers no apology, simply asking why such things are necessary. Indignation flares as the priestess questions his ignorance. She reminds him that such etiquette is the only way to honor Lord Hestio. The history of their faith unfolds in the light of the stained glass. Hestio, the adopted son of the goddess Ganymedes, lived as a mortal under the care of the divine. While dwelling in the heavens, he looked down to find humans shivering upon the cold earth. Taking pity on their plight, he descended and offered them fire. From that hour forth, humanity followed him as both father and god. Every ritual involves kindling a fire and creating smoke from the extinguished flame to show respect. The dark-haired man remains unimpressed, stating that saying they honor him is mistaken. He claims that calling upon him would be a more precise description of the act. The priestess finds his words strange once again. He explains that the reason people light and extinguish the fire is to summon Hestio. When the flame dies, Hestio supposedly descends to relight it himself. He performed this act every time to spare the people the trouble of struggling with the cold, however. The humans misunderstood his kindness, believing he only appeared because the fire was put out. The priestess notes his uncanny knowledge of these divine details, asking if he has met Lord Hestio himself. He ignores the question, arguing that all current etiquette began from a simple misconception. Because the gods never instructed humans in these matters, he questions how such rituals could aid the sacraments. He reminds her that he is a priest, though she retorts that she remembers his status well enough. He places a candle down with a sharp click, mentioning he told Alonso the exact same thing. Silence hangs heavy between them as the priestess realizes Father Alonso never mentioned such a conversation. She concludes they dwell in a land of the one-eyed where truth is obscured. Though she admits to the man that she is not particularly devout, her skeptical nature drives her to follow customs without question. She grips her pen tightly, her frustration mounting. It is a wonder to her that no one has reported this man for heresy. She decides to investigate him further, wondering about the nature of the Lord. The local villagers offer nothing but praise for the man. A father carrying a child speaks of the legend where the Lord felled a great giant and visited the nest of a sleeping dragon. A woman describes him as a man of great refinement, though she hesitates to speak carelessly. The people here treat him as a god, a fact that makes the priestess feel like an outsider. She realizes she must remain in this place for another 10 years and wonders if she can truly adapt. The quill clicks back into its holder as she finishes her writing. Discomfort follows her through the halls. She stays lodged in the Lord's manor because the temple quarters are in such poor condition. To her, this is an uncomfortable cohabitation with a suspicious man. As she moves through the manor, she spots visitors arriving in the rugged terrain. She wonders why anyone would visit this place. They move with purpose toward the Lord's office, and she follows at a distance to observe. The Lord stands in his study as the visitors enter. He acknowledges that they were seeking him. An old man with a scarred face and white hair approaches, claiming he came after hearing tales of the Lord's long life. He mentions the rumors of the Lord living for 300 years, bordering on immortality. The Lord asks if the man came to find the reason behind his agelessness. The priestess watches from the doorway, her breath catching as the mystery deepens. The old man, Rashid, denies seeking the secret of long life. He reveals he comes from the kingdom of Araric for a different purpose. He believes the Lord might know something of the curse afflicting his son. Rashid is 67 years old and fathered the child when he was 21. The boy standing beside him looks no older than a child, yet Rashid speaks with honesty, explaining the boy should be fully grown with children of his own. The tragedy began the day the boy returned from death, after an unforeseen accident where he drowned in a stream. Rashid and his wife confirmed his passing and held a funeral. Not long after the burial, screams rang out from the grave. The priestess listens in shock as the story of the resurrection unfolds. They hastily dug up the grave and opened the coffin, only to find the child crying within. From that day forward, the boy ceased to grow. His mind regressed to that of an infant, remembering nothing except that Rashid is his father. Rashid explains that they bury their dead intact so they may travel to the afterlife connected to the earth, but his son could not pass on. He believes the boy is cursed by the gods for an insult uttered when he was 8 years old. The Lord interrupts, commanding Rashid to cease his lies. He points out that Araric is a distant country in the east and questions how rumors of his existence could have traveled so far. The Lord finds the story impossible. Outside of the region of Osnover, few people know of him. He accuses Rashid of wandering until he heard rumors and came on a whim. He argues that if priests, mages, or alchemists could not fix a curse, then it is no curse at all. He demands the truth about what Rashid did to the child. A memory from 30 years ago flashes through the air. A command to charge resounds over a battlefield. The scene shifts to a violent siege 3 decades in the past. Heavy wooden gates groan as they are forced open. Soldiers push through the breach amidst the chaos of war. A younger Rashid is called by a comrade who relays the boss's orders. They are to get inside and capture an old man. Rashid questions the identity of their target. The comrade admits he does not know the details, only that the man is supposedly an alchemist researching the secrets of immortality. The vast laboratory stands eerily vacant, forcing Rashid to wonder if the man has already fled. Such an escape would prove most troublesome for their mission. He steps cautiously across the stone floor, the silence broken only by the bubbling of strange concoctions over an untended flame. The heat from the hearth suggests the occupant left in a great hurry, failing even to extinguish the fires. Rashid's attention is drawn to a glowing vial, but as he reaches out, a voice snarls from the shadows, commanding him not to touch the vessel with his filthy hands. A hooded figure lunges forward with startling speed. A blinding flash erupts as Rashid realizes the brilliance emanating from the stranger is the raw glow of mana. The resulting explosion rocks the room, filling the air with thick, acrid smoke. Rashid coughs violently, struggling to see through the haze as the hooded figure scrambles across the floor. The alchemist shrieks in agony, lamenting the loss of something precious. He spits out curses, his voice a frantic mumble as he desperately tries to salvage a small tube of red liquid from the wreckage. Rashid recovers and strikes with lethal precision. His blade bites deep, drawing a sharp cry of pain from the intruder. The alchemist stumbles back, his body reeling from the force of the blow. He collapses near the hearth, his cloak catching fire as the flames begin to consume his form. As the fire rises, Rashid gazes at the dying man and realizes a startling truth. The youth he just slew was the very alchemist they sought. He questions how this could be, as the orders clearly described an old man pursuing immortality. It becomes clear the man had likely succeeded in slowing his own aging. Rashid wonders if the alchemist was truly that close to his goal, realizing that had he not struck him down, the man might have achieved the impossible. Later, Rashid stands before his superior, who commands his attention. The superior speaks with cold wisdom, noting that historically, those fools who chase immortality never meet a proper end. He insists such pursuits lead only to a miserable death, making the alchemist's end a mercy. He tells Rashid not to worry over the kill, dismissing the boss's interest as a fleeting delusion that will soon be forgotten. Though Rashid understands the words, he cannot bring himself to discard the red elixir he salvaged. The sight of the alchemist's unnatural youth filled him with a quiet faith. It was not greed for eternal life that guided his hand, but the desperate thought that the vial might be sold for a handsome sum to save his family. Fate, however, had a different plan. Shortly after the siege, misfortune befell Rashid's young son. Driven by desperation, Rashid felt compelled to do whatever was necessary to save him. He believed the alchemist's elixir might restore the boy's life. Even after he administered the red liquid, the child did not wake. Heartbroken and believing him dead, Rashid laid his son in the earth. Then the impossible happened. Screams began to leak from the fresh grave. Rashid explains to his lord that he and his wife never gave up, continuing to care for the boy despite the horror of his return. The tragedy took a toll on the family. Before Rashid's wife passed away, she claimed their son was no longer the child they knew. The boy sits on the floor, his eyes dark and vacant as he gnaws on raw meat. When Rashid tries to intervene, calling him a rascal, the boy snaps. He lunges with animalistic ferocity, his teeth sinking into Rashid's hand. A red-haired woman watches from the doorway, gasping in terror as the father groans in pain. The Lord observes the scene with a somber expression, acknowledging the immense trials Rashid endured to reach this moment. He notes that while no one could discern the cause of the boy's affliction, Rashid likely heard only the grim conclusion that there was no cure. He asks Rashid if he truly believes the creature before them is still his child. Rashid insists that even if the boy behaves like a beast, he still bears the form of his son, asking how a parent could ever deny their own blood. The Lord expresses pity but remains firm. He echoes the words of Rashid's late wife, declaring that the creature is not his son and was never truly alive to begin with. Rashid recoils in shock, demanding to know what the Lord means. The Lord ignores the plea, stating that only one path remains to end the nightmare. He moves with sudden, lethal intent. Rashid cries out for him to wait, begging his sire to stop, but the Lord's resolve is absolute. He draws his weapon and drives it home. The red-haired woman screams as the blade pierces the boy's chest. Blood splatters across the floor, forming a dark pool on the stone. The Lord stands over the fallen form, his face a mask of grim necessity as the life, or the imitation of it, finally fades. The weight of the act hangs heavy in the silent room, marked only by the seal of the house. Behind her, a jagged blade pierces the black-haired man's back. He hacks out a cough, red droplets spraying across the cold stone floor. A silent thought lingers on the burden of living as an immortal. The old man observes the hidden blade with a grimace. With a voice thick with regret, he apologizes to the man he calls sire, insisting he had no other choice in the matter. The priestess demands to know what is happening, her shout drawing the traitor's attention. Panic flares in the old man's eyes as he realizes she has overheard their treason. He curses his misfortune, deciding he cannot leave any witnesses alive. With a sudden burst of speed, he swings his weapon toward her. A sharp grunt of pain escapes the priestess as she narrowly avoids the strike. A guttural roar of agony tears through the room from the fallen man. Desperate to help, she rushes toward the black-haired figure, calling out to her sire and asking if he still draws breath. Light flickers around the priestess's fingers as she prepares a healing spell. A sudden impact interrupts her focus. A boy with frantic wide eyes lunges from the shadows, forcing a scream of terror from her. The black-haired man speaks with a chilling calm, reminding her of his wife's warning that the child is not his son. He states firmly that the creature was never truly alive. Confusion clouds the priestess's mind as she wonders how he can be so certain of such a horrific claim. The boy's mouth stretches wide, revealing rows of sharp, predatory teeth. Despite his human appearance, the black-haired man calls out to Roberta. He commands her not to falter, explaining that the thing before them is nothing but an empty husk. Dark fluid trickles from the man's throat. Roberta stands her ground against the monster, her blade beginning to glow with a fierce blue light. She invokes the name Ganymede, demanding a strike against the sons born of ignorance and barbarism. The blade whistles through the air, severing the boy's arm. Instead of blood and bone, a tangle of writhing red vines spills from the stump. Roberta recoils, realizing these vines are what provide the child's physical form. She condemns the creature for its attempt to pass as human. Turning to the old man, she commands Rashid to look closely. She forces him to witness the true, monstrous nature of the entity he believed was his son. The severed limb lies motionless on the floor, devoid of any life-giving fluid. Roberta notes the absence of blood and wonders if the creature is even capable of feeling pain. She realizes her strikes must find a more vital core. A sudden movement behind her causes her to gasp in surprise. The black-haired man stands tall once more, his hand gripping the boy's head with crushing force. Roberta stammers in shock, calling out to her sire in disbelief. She struggles to understand how he can still move after such a wound. The man remains silent, his presence radiating a cold, ancient power. Droplets of blood hover in the air before flowing backward into the man's body. The wounds on his chest and neck seal as if they never existed. Rashid watches the impossible display with wide, terrified eyes. The man reflects internally that this unnatural recovery is the sole reason he has been able to survive for so many years. The master stands with a horrific wound through his stomach, his neck torn open in a way that should signify immediate death. Roberta watches in stunned silence, realizing it would not be strange if he had already perished. Yet he continues to live. A strange phenomenon occurs as blood flows backward into his body, defying the laws of nature. Wounds close seamlessly, leaving no trace of a scar, a form of healing magic never before heard of. Roberta struggles to comprehend how such a thing is possible, her mind racing with the question of how he still draws breath. A soft tapping sound breaks the tension as she gasps, her eyes wide with disbelief at the impossible recovery unfolding before her. Rashid collapses, a broken sound escaping his throat as he asks if his son died a long time ago. The master looks down at him, confirming the boy perished at the time of the accident. He explains that the figure Rashid cherished was naught but a creature wrought by an alchemist, a parasite dwelling within a host. Rashid stares into the master's dark eyes, seeking answers for what this entity truly was. The master continues, noting that although Rashid gave the elixir to his son, the boy did not awaken at once. This delay occurred because the entity required time to settle within the flesh. The master explains that the parasite required time to take root and seize control of the corpse. Rashid, trembling, asks how the entity followed him as if he were its true father. Coldly, the master clarifies that the thing using the son's body as a vessel merely utilized whatever memories remained within the flesh. It was not love, but an instinct to survive. Even when the creature heard Rashid's cry, it turned violent and attacked, acting not to protect the father but to preserve its own shield. Rashid falls into a heavy silence, admitting that in the end his wife was right. The master presses further, suggesting it wasn't just his wife who saw the truth. He posits that among those Rashid met, someone else must have said the child was not alive and needed to be killed. He questions if Rashid drew his blade every time someone spoke those words, killing to protect something that was never his son. The master observes that Rashid could not accept his son's death and chose to defy the natural order. Because he sought to turn his sight from the truth, he committed countless sins and killed numerous people. To undo a single misstep, he forced far too many sacrifices upon the world. Rashid admits his foolishness and his sin, weeping as he confesses he could not bear to lose his son a second time. He finally acknowledges that the creature was not his son but a monster that stole a poor child's body. With a final, desperate plea, he asks if his son suffered after death because of his actions. He begs to know if the boy's soul found its way to the afterlife in peace. The master commands Rashid to hear him well, stating firmly that there is no afterlife. He explains that there is only this harsh world and the finality of death. Because of this, he offers a grim comfort. Rashid's son did not suffer. Later, the broken man is handed over to the guards to face the law. He shall face just judgment when his trial arrives, a necessary reckoning for the many deaths he fled from throughout his long deception. The master stands over a blade, his expression unreadable as the cycle of violence finally meets the cold hand of justice. Even after the violence that transpired, news of the attack on the Lord spreads through the castle. In the courtyard, servants whisper about how the Lord was attacked, yet they seem largely untroubled by the event. Dithmarschen remains as quiet as ever, the master noting that the chaos was contained. Roberta encounters a man named Byrne who expresses relief that she is safe. She looks at the master, realizing that the office was drenched in blood, yet no one is in distress. Having seen the master's nature herself, she begins to understand the calm. When one beholds a man who is an anomaly every day, the impossible becomes mundane. The master looks up from his desk and calls Roberta's name, sensing there is much she wishes to ask. Roberta reacts with a startled gasp, asking why the master would bring this up so suddenly. He notes that her curiosity is written plainly upon her face and invites her to ask whatever she wishes, sensing her thoughts are in disarray. He offers to explain how he knew the child's true nature or even the secret of how he still lives, asking if none of this troubles her. Roberta hesitates, claiming she is fine despite her obvious interest. She admits there is much she would ask, yet she remains haunted by his claim that there is no afterlife. That statement carries a weight far greater than any religious ceremony he has performed. While the scriptures teach that souls are divided upon death, the virtuous ascending to heaven and the wicked cast into hell, the master's denial challenges everything. The notion of an afterlife grants solace to countless souls, yet he stands as a living contradiction to those holy words. Roberta reflects on how this man denied the very foundation of her faith. As a priestess, she feels she ought to question him, yet his words do not ring of falsehood or deceit. This is why she dares not ask further. She fears the truth he holds may be more than she can bear. It feels as though his reality would break all she knows. For now, she decides she will not seek the answers. The master accepts this with a quiet heh, noting that she resembles someone named Alonso. Roberta is taken aback, asking for clarification. The master recalls that Alonso was also very curious, yet remained cautious in what he chose to ask. Roberta is struck by the mention of that child, as the master explains that Alonso felt the truth might destroy everything he knew. A soft sound fills the room as the master reflects on those who remained by his side the longest, noting they were all much the same. Even Hilda, a previous lord, waited until the very end to ask the difficult questions. Roberta is stunned to hear the names of those who came before. The master admits that while it means little to him, they were all remarkably careful. He looks at Roberta, sensing that she shall remain in this place for a long while. Though his face appears no older than her own, Roberta begins to see the immense weight of years pressing upon him, a burden revealed little by little. Roberta thinks to herself that she has grown accustomed to the master's strange presence. He asks if that is truly the case as he continues his work at the desk. As winter draws toward its end, a small sprout pushes through the snow, signaling a change in the seasons. However, for reasons unknown, the Lord does not open his eyes for some time. He remains still, as though he has fallen into an endless slumber, leaving the castle in a state of quiet suspension.